All right, cool. So we're gonna move on to a little bit of stand-up passing, some really, really basic stand-up passing ideas called Toreando passing. And it's bullfighter passing. So act like you're a matador holding the flag and you're trying to taunt the bull and get out of the way, right? We're gonna do that in people's legs. But before we move on to that, just a couple quick concepts and principles to understand about guard play, guard passing, guard retention, stuff like that. That'll really help make passing a little more understandable, especially at the beginning. I throw a lot of moves at you guys, a lot of like really long sequences of like chains of moves, and sometimes it's like 10 to 12 steps long, and you're like, how am I supposed to remember all this stuff? And you know, it's easier to remember like 1 or 2 or 3 like key principles than it is to remember like 45 moves for 3 different passes. If you can just remember these couple things, you can kind of build yourself a game plan of how to pass the guard or play guard and not have to worry too much about the steps themselves. So the first thing, there's really like 3 things or so to mention. The first thing is about the layers of the guard. Right now we're going to be working on the longest range guard work, which means it's the bottoms of her feet, all right? And what that means is when I'm standing up, if she's able to put the bottoms of her feet on me, she's able to use her legs, the strongest part of her body, and keep me at the longest possible range that she wants to, okay? So I'm gonna be trying to close the space between her and I, and she's gonna be trying to basically maintain the space between her and I. She's trying to use that space to make stuff happen. I'm trying to get rid of that space so I can make things happen, right? So if her feet are on me, in order for me to pass this guard, I have to get rid of her feet first because I can't get inside to pass while her feet are still on me. So whether that's stripping the feet off, finding ways around the legs and things like that, right? We're gonna deal with some of that stuff a little bit later, right? But the longest range is the bottoms of the feet. The next range up is the knees, which is more like a half guard, which is like a medium range, right? She doesn't have the length of her legs. She only has half the length of her legs to deal with, right? And then her arms are gonna start supporting a lot more with her frames. But now it's the bottoms of or the fronts of the knees that I have to get rid of, right? And then once I clear the fronts of the knees, now her only last resort of defense is her arms, her frames with her arms, right? She doesn't have the use of her legs really to help too much anymore to make space, so she's got to use her hands, which is the weakest part of her body. Well, compared to her legs, it's a lot weaker than her body, right? So when you're playing guard, you're always going to have success when your legs are in front of people. The moment they get past, right, that's when you have problems, obviously. And your arm's only job is to support your legs, okay? When you're maintaining guard, I should say, all right? And now the next thing is about the box, all right? And this is kind of my favorite thing to talk about. Hip bone to hip bone, shoulder to shoulder makes a rectangle. This is the box. This is what we're ultimately trying to control all the time on our partner. Whether it's the front side or the back side, it doesn't matter. This space right here is what I need to control, and she's gonna use her arms and her legs to protect that space at all costs, right? So it's my job to find different ways to get in there. I have to get past these layers to get there. But the last layer, it's not really even a layer of defense, but it's the last layer before I reach that box, is her hips, like basically where her belt is. So my goal when I'm passing the guard isn't necessarily to go through step A, B, C, and D and get through this pass. It's to take this foot off, take this knee off, and get in this pocket and secure it with something as fast as I can, because once I can cover the pockets up, I take away her ability to bring her knees to her shoulders, right? If she has mobility in her legs, she can close off this space from the sides, right? And I can't get through here anymore. Like, how am I supposed to get in this space and get past her guard, right? If she's able to close off that space. And likewise with the inside too. I can't cut through the inside if she's bringing her knees up to her shoulders. It's very hard for me to make that work, right? So one of my jobs in passing the guard is to strip the feet, but also to pull the knees away from the armpits, open up that space where I can put myself in it and get control of it as fast as possible. Then once I get control of the hips, then I'm gonna start working my way up to controlling the head so I can start attacking the arms and the neck and things like that. Okay. Oh no, it's not good. I got a lat cramp.
Yeah.
That sucks. All right, so that's kind of like the things that I'm thinking about. When I'm personally passing the guard, I'm not thinking about, oh, okay, I'm gonna try a X pass or, you know, this type of pass, or I'm not like thinking about like what pass I'm gonna do. I'm just thinking about like what I need to do to strip the legs away to get into the pockets ultimately and then control that box, okay? So it's a little bit easier, I think, in the beginning if you think about passing in terms of that rather than thinking about the steps. The steps are important and you're gonna learn them and you're gonna get good at them and stuff like that. I'm not saying don't learn the steps, but I'm saying if you're ever lost and you're standing up in front of someone, you're like, crap, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do with my hands. Well, your hands are supposed to take the feet away and get past the legs, obviously. It's not rocket science, but that's a simpler way of looking at jiu-jitsu. So with Toreando passing, what our goal is to do a couple different things. I'm either gonna use one or two of my hands, usually both hands with Toreando passing. I'm trying to pull her knees away from her shoulders to create that space, or I'm trying to turn her hips off axis of mine so that she can't put her feet back in front of me anymore. Okay, those are really the two main goals of Toreando passing. If I can rotate her hips, I can find a way to get in here, right, and control. And even if she's keeping that really tight, if I can turn her hips, now I can find a way to the box on the back, right? So I can find a way to control the back and start to attack her here. But either way, I can get past her legs, and that's the goal. So most of our openings that we did standing up got us in a position where we had a lapel grip, maybe two lapel grips, a knee grip, sometimes a belt grip, sometimes a sleeve grip, okay? Doesn't really matter too much what your grips are. You can build your passing based on what grips you already have, but we're just not gonna be doing any passes with the lapel tonight. We're gonna be controlling the legs solely, right? So number one, before I do anything else, I have to make sure that my posture is acceptable for me. Right now, my shoulders are really far in front of my knees, so a lot of my weight is in my toes. If Michelle manages to put her feet on my hips or anything like that and get some kind of grips where she can pull, she's gonna be able to lift me up, potentially throw me over her head, attack my arms and stuff like that. So she's gonna have a good ability to off balance me. So typically I wanna keep one of my knees in front of my head and shoulders. I wanna get down nice and low, but stay in nice and tight so I can keep pressure on her, make it harder for her to put her feet on me. But I don't really wanna lean too much because then I give her too much of my own base, right? But once I'm here, I'm gonna reach back with both of my hands, and I like to grab on the inside of the pants. You can grab inside, outside. You can grab outside, outside. It doesn't really matter. I like inside, inside the best, personally, because I feel like this grip is really fast and easy to get, and it allows me to use my elbows on her ankles and her shins, okay? And this is kind of key as we start doing this. If I can control her heels and keep them close to her butt, it's gonna be hard for her to circle her legs around and put them on my biceps and strip my grips and stuff like that. It makes it a lot harder for us to work when the bottoms of her feet are on us, right? Because now I have to deal with this new problem that just created. Whereas if I can just keep her feet off of me for a second, I don't have to deal with that problem, right? I just have to pass the knees now. So our very first one is just the knee on belly. Very simple, but it's very effective. So as I'm driving in, I'm nice and low. I like to keep my stance a little bit staggered, right? If I'm too close here and she grabs both my ankles and kicks, I could fall backwards, things like that. So it's usually best to keep one leg forward, one leg back. So what I'm gonna do is pin her knees up into her shoulders. I'm gonna do the opposite of what I'm telling you guys the goal is. I wanna pull her knees away, but first I wanna push them in to create some kind of pressure, because usually when you push into people, they're gonna push back or resist a little bit, okay? And when she does, I'm gonna pop back, okay? And now my goal is to put whatever's closest to the pocket in the pocket. Right now, this knee is the closest thing to her pocket, so I'm literally just gonna turn my knee in and step my knee in this pocket right here, okay? Once I'm here, I can just control the far pocket. I'll talk more about far pocket stuff later, but I'm gonna control the far hip as well. And if I wanted to, I could just drop my hip down, settle into the side, and finish my pass here. If I wanted to score knee on belly points, I would switch my hands and switch my knees and face her head. You don't get points if you're facing their legs, you have to face their head, okay? But the goal is to get in here and make it impossible for her to bring her knee back to her shoulder as fast as possible. If my right leg is forward, right, and I pin her legs back, the closest thing now is this one, so I can step through and go right to this knee. And when I get here, I like to grab the inside of the collar on the back of the neck and immediately thumb in grip, grab this belt, and lock it across the pocket. Right. Cool. All right. So it doesn't really matter which way you go. Just remember your goal ultimately is to occupy this space right here with whatever's fastest, whatever's closest. If I'm way back here it might take me a long time to step all the way around, in which case she's gonna frame, shrimp, and recover, right? So whatever's closest. If I pop back and this leg's in front, man, I'm just gonna spike that right into her belly, use that, drop myself down, finish my pass. Or I can step all the way around, doesn't really matter. Just remember, you don't score unless you're facing their head. So, about these elbows real quick. I'm keeping the heels in, because like I said, it stops her from putting her feet on me, at least slows her down a little bit. If you're standing up like this and being lazy, people are gonna, one, strip your grips, or they're gonna just lasso, fence, and now you have a whole crap load of more problems to deal with that are a lot harder to deal with than just the knees, right? So we don't want that to happen. So I'm low, using my elbows on her ankles in this position to kind of control her feet a little bit. I pop back, I step whatever's closest into that pocket, and then just finish through to the other pocket. Finish. Or come through, finish, always controlling both pockets, okay? Any questions on this first one? Let's do it then, 1, 2, 3. All right, so another kind of common reaction to, remember, I'm pulling her knees away from her armpits to separate that space on the sides to get in the pockets, right? But people are, as they get better, like they're not gonna let you do that, right? The smart thing for her to do is to keep that space closed, and a lot of times, just sit up with me, right? Because if she sits up, that box is still closed. Like I still can't really get in there. She's gonna be able to like wrap up my legs, hook my shins, right, setting up grips, and potentially work her own sweep. She's really good, particularly in this position, so she likes to sit up. So sometimes people will sit up, but one thing we can do if they do sit up, we're only gonna do this for a few minutes, but right, as I come back and pull her up, once I get her feet on the ground, I'm gonna keep her knees pinned on the ground and just drop my weight into them. I'm gonna bring my knees on the outside of hers and start pinching my knees outside of hers, and then I just drop and slide and use my chest right on her chest to knock her straight back. And you go right to the mount. And yes, I've seen this done at the highest level of competition. I know it works. You just have to be very aggressive with it. But it's pretty embarrassing when it happens to you. So as we come up, I'm basically just creating a slide. So I'm pinning her legs down, my knees go outside of hers, thrusting my hips forward, and I just, as fast as I can, I start putting my weight on the top of her legs with mine, and then just slide down, pretending she was a slide, driving my hips forward, and I can end up in the mount. One time, really fast on the side. Okay. All right. Right. So I pull, she sits up. I'm just sliding, and I'm blasting her with my hips and my chest to make sure she goes back down to the back. And I slide down, and I can start getting ready to attack. All right. So I just want to spend like a couple minutes, maybe like 3 minutes on that. So maybe like 5 tries each or so, and then we'll move on to the next pass. All right. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. So same pass, slightly different version. So sometimes as we're doing this pass, people are going to have their legs extended a little bit. Maybe your range has to be a little bit further away when you hop back, right? As I'm jumping back, maybe her feet don't go on the ground and she's kind of staying a little more like up here. Right now my knee is really far away, so that's a long way for me to travel. So one way we can kind of combat that, and also just another kind of variation of this pass that's really effective, is doing side to side. So that last one we were going kind of in and out and then working our way around the legs. This time we can go side to side. So again, I like to keep my elbows down nice and tight, and this time I'm gonna hop to one side and push the knees to the other so that my forearm crosses over the shin on the close leg, right? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the other side to the same thing, right? So I'm just gonna go side to side. A couple times, right? And then when I feel like I'm ready to go, I'm just gonna do a shoulder drop right into the pocket, because it's the closest thing, right? The closest thing to the pocket is the shoulder, so I'm gonna drop that in and clear that space. I like to keep the far pant grip. My left grip usually comes off, so I can start scooping up and working my way up around to the side, right? I like having an under the arm grip with my left hand, because you can usually force back take situations and stuff like that. But either way, when I'm here, when she tries to shrimp out, all she's doing is settling into side control. Especially if you keep this leg grip, it's really hard for them to get anywhere past this point and recover their legs. But usually this close grip is gonna get knocked off. Totally fine to let go of it. But when you're passing the guard, I want you guys to understand too, like, it doesn't have to be so like perfect. It doesn't always have to be like the shoulder right in the right spot. If you jump to the side and they're keeping their knees in tight to their chest and you just roll them onto their side, I mean, it's not beautiful, but it worked, right? Got the job done. I've got myself in the pocket, she's on her side. I can start attacking seatbelt for the backpack, stuff like that, right? So it's really just about redirecting the hips and then getting in that pocket. But the shoulder drop is really strong because it happens really fast and it creates a ton of pressure down here on the hip. So I like to use the curved part right here. Basically my trap, this muscle right here, above the shoulder next to the neck. That's actually gonna connect to the pocket, and my shoulder is usually outside of the hip and my head's on the inside, right? So just another one, so I go left, right, left. Spike that shoulder right outside of the hip, clearing that pocket as fast as I can. And start clearing the side control. All right, so it doesn't really matter too if you drop and the shoulder is on top, right? This is totally fine. I like it doing a little bit better personally, but it really doesn't matter. Quiet, Yoshi, quiet. Just remember your goal is to get in the pocket with something, right? Again, side, side, drop in, right? Consolidate the space, control it, and then just don't lose your grips until they're done struggling, because I promise you, they're gonna start shrimping, start trying to do all this stuff. This leg grip is so strong right here, she can't really do much of anything to recover because you're trapping. That's why I like to reach over the leg, okay? Any questions? Let's do it, last one, 1, 2, 3. So the only reason why we're really going side to side at all on this is just to fake people out, right? Because you know, once you start going with people that are better than you, and a lot of times when you're doing these passes too, like it doesn't always require grips. Like don't always rely too much on grips. Just a good control over the seat or even down on the ankles is usually enough to make a lot of these passes work, right? But as I'm going, like the moment I start to go to one side, Michelle's gonna redirect her hips, right, and settle her defenses back on this side. And that's why we're going side to side, is because we know that anyone that's good, the moment you start going to one side, they're gonna start redirecting their energy back to this side anyway. So once she redirects, right, I give myself a better chance of going back to the other side because she's already assuming I'm going to that first side, right? So we're just going basically to fake the person out. So you don't have to go like 1, 2, 3, 4 as you're doing the pass. That's kind of just practice to get your feet moving and all that stuff, right? But I would recommend trying to fake people out at least once when you do these kind of passes. You'll have a little bit better success. Cool. All right, well, great job tonight, everybody. Well done.